Namaste and welcome to this 10 p.m. show this Wednesday. And Wednesday 10 p.m. That means Shri Vibhuti Jha is bound to be there. So
Yes,
Vibhuti
bound
ji,
to be there.
namaskar, welcome. And today we have Shri Balraj Deol. So before I start, let me introduce Shri Balraj ji with you. He edits a Punjabi weekly called Khabarnama. I don't know whether it is still runs or it no longer runs, but that is a very popular weekly in Canada. He lives in Toronto and has direct experience of the brutality of Khalistan activism. So that being that, today is also an important day. Today is the death anniversary of Sri Shyama Prasad Mukherjee, who actually is the architect of the present West Bengal. Otherwise, the whole of Bengal was going to go the Pakistan way. And today is also another very important day, a very poignant, a very sad day, when 329 lives were lost because some desperados, terrorists of Babbar Khalsa, they bombed the AI 182 flight that was on its way from Vancouver to Toronto to London to India. And Balraj Deol has done intensive work on this subject and has personal experience. Balraj, if I might ask you, I was told that because of the work that you were doing and you were opposing this extremism, you were actually attacked by these people, and they almost left you. They left you for almost dead. Can you just recount that incident to us?
Yes, that was back in end of 1985, first week of September, and it was because of my views on extremism. After 1984, the situation was very charged here, and on 23rd of June 85, the Air India bombing took place, and the atmosphere became more tense. There were calls for boycott of Hindu businesses. So there was chances of widening gap between Hindus and Sikhs who were living very peacefully together. So back then we formed a Hindu-Sikh peace forum and said, let's give peace a chance, because there was a Rajiv Longowal Accord by then, and that was disliked by those who supported extremism. So they attacked me close to middle of night when I returned to my apartment building, a multi-story apartment building where there is an underground garage. So that's what happened then.
Okay, and your peace efforts have continued regardless, in spite of all those attacks. So can you just give us a brief background of this whole situation as it operated, mostly in Canada, and I think it has come into the USA as well, that we will ask Vibhuti ji a little later how it is working in the USA. But can you give me the brief overall view of the roots of this problem in Canada?
I think roots go back to 70s or mid 70s, when Dr. Jagjit Singh Chauhan, who was propagating for Khalistan from UK, he visited USA and Canada, and he visited a couple of times Canada, but there were no takers of his views at that point. By 82, when Akalis launched that Dharm Yudh Morcha for demands, whatever they were asking for, that is when atmosphere became little charged. More people were concerned about the situation in Punjab. So the Khalistani voices got some support from 82 onwards. But with Blue Star in 1984, the situation became very, very charged. So that is when the real Khalistan movement actually took hold in here.
Okay. And then what happened?
You see, from 1984, that is when they started planning all kind of actions back in India. Three, four organizations propped up, like World Sikh Organization, International Sikh Youth Federation, which was later headed by Lakhbir Singh Rode, who was nephew of Bhindranwala, and Babbar Khalsa, headed by Talvinder Singh Parmar. Then some factions of these few organizations also came up. So these were the three main organizations back then, although there was Council of Khalistan of Jagjit Singh Chauhan and some other minor groups. So that is when the planning of armed kind of struggle was advocated by some of these groups or members of some of these groups. And people started visiting Pakistan. A lot of Canadian youth influenced by Khalistanis went to Pakistan to get armed training. And by end of 1984, the Canadian police was informed by two criminals, one from Montreal and one from Vancouver, that there is possibility of bombing of Air India, but Canadian authorities did not pay much attention to it. Actually, Mr. Parmar was on the watch list since 1982 because of his involvement in murder of, I think, one or two policemen in Punjab. He was also arrested in Germany for extradition, but Indians failed to get that extradition and he returned to Canada. By March, first week 1985, the Canadian Security Intelligence Services, which is called CSIS, obtained surveillance order from the court to put surveillance on Talvinder Singh Parmar, the head of Babbar Khalsa, who is now known as the person who created all this this plan of bombing Air India. So there was surveillance on him from March onward, 1985. There were several recordings of Parmar by CSIS, which later somehow they destroyed it for some reason, and that also became obstacle during the prosecution of associates of Talvinder Singh Parmar, which is Rubduman Singh Malik and Ajab Singh Bagri. And also, it is important to note that when Talvinder Singh Parmar and Inderjit Singh Rayat, they tested their first device, the first bomb in the jungle, in the woods, two CSIS agents, the Canadian Security Intelligence agents, followed them from distance. And it was 4th of June. The real bombing took place on 23rd. So on 4th of June, they tested their crude device in the woods. And these CSIS agents, they heard the explosion. They thought it was probably a gunfire, but they did not pay much attention. They did not take any photographs or they did not videograph this. Later, they discovered that there was some sort of explosion, but CSIS failed to inform RCMP, which is the National Police for Criminal Investigation. So there was lack of coordination. There was not proper surveillance. So there were a lot of systematic failures. Otherwise, had they taken it seriously, the test bomb of 4th of June, there was no chance that they will get away with such a big tragedy, which took place on 23rd. And also on that day, CSIS agents saw three persons. It was Talvinder Singh Parmar, Inderjit Singh Rayat, and third person, which is known in Air India case as Mr. X. Now, Mr. X to date is a mystery. Mr. Rayat accepted it in Air India case and in interrogation by the police that Mr. X was brought by Mr. Talvinder Singh Parmar to BC, to British Columbia, to his house in Duncan from Ontario. He was a youthful young guy, probably around 25 to 30 years old, but Rayat said he does not know his name. Why this Mr. X was brought? Because the bomb which was tested and made by Inderjit Singh Rayat was not to the satisfaction of Talvinder Singh Parmar. So Mr. X stayed at Mr. Rayat's house and built those devices. Mr. Riyat and Parmar provided all the material, but Mr. Riyat does not know his name. He knew his number, but not his name. So Mr. Riyat, for the information of those who are watching us, is the only person who was persecuted, who was jailed in this big terrorist attack. He was punished on different counts 3 times. We should not forget that 329 people died on Air India Flight 182 due to terrorist bombing. But at the same time, actually 55 minutes before that, another bomb exploded on the tarmac at Narita Airport in Japan. And the bomb was again loaded on CP Air from Vancouver to Narita, which was going to be transferred to Air India 301, and the target would have been 177 more passengers. But this bomb exploded on the ground while the luggage was being transferred. So 2 baggage handlers were killed and 4 were injured. So in that case, Japanese forensic experts gathered enough evidence to link this bombing to a Sanyo stereo, which was sold in Duncan, BC by Sanyo Company. And there were enough proofs that Mr. Inderjit Singh Riyat bought that Sanyo stereo. So he was charged for 2 counts of manslaughter. That is when he was given 10 years jail under that case of Narita. When Air India trial came up, Mr. Ajab Singh Bagdi and Rupaduman Singh Malk were charged. That is when Riyat was again charged for Air India bombing, which is Kanishka bombing. He done plea bargaining with the government side. We call here Crown. I think you guys probably call it a government lawyer or something, or crown attorney here. So under plea bargaining, he agreed to provide evidence, whatever he knew, against the other 2 who were charged, and got away with 5 years of jail. But when he went to the stand, he lied, and judge called him unmitigated liar who lied 27 times under oath. So he was charged again for lying, which is called perjury charge, and later was given 9 more years of jail. So that was the 3rd time he was jailed, but he did not open his mouth to date regarding who else was involved, up to what extent, who was Mr. X, and so on. So he's quiet. He is holding all the secrets to this terrorist bombing, which cost 331 lives in total.
That's very unfortunate. That's the attitude of the government of Canada was quite lackadaisical. Vibhuti Ji, now I come to you, and you have been around in New York City for quite some time, and you have seen this problem grow from almost next to nothing. So, where would you actually trace this from in the USA?
First of all, thank you very much. The important part is I want to definitely respectfully say that Balraj recounted that entire story. It was chilling to know there's so much details that we read about in the paper, but to hear from somebody who has a first-hand experience, who survived a bloody hit on himself. So, it is both, it feels very, very nice to meet somebody who has survived an onslaught on himself. So tracing back the roots of it, my experience goes through, and this is a humble request to you, Balraj, because the first time, although history books will talk about that the British accorded special status to the Sikh army for their loyalty and everything else, promised them a deal for everything that they are now asking for. But 1977 December is the time when I first heard the word Khalistan in a remarkably vicious way. When we are talking about the roots of it, from a Sikh friend you always called him a gentle Sardar because he was such a soft-spoken, great guy. And this happened in a very remarkable evening. For the first ever time, we were witnessing a night football game between JCT Mills Phagwada and Mohan Bagan. Seth Nagji football tournament, 77 or early 78 December. 77 December or 78 Jan, somewhere along the line. And Mohan Bagan beat JCT Mills with Inder Singh and Kashmira Singh as their players. Mohan Bagan had Habib, Akbar, Subhas Bhaumik, all the star players. But Mohan Bagan outplayed, and we were 1-2-0. And returning, walking back to our home, I asked, "Wow, Mohan Bagan ne kya shandar khel khela aaj." And this man, he completely flipped. On माँ बहन की, I'm cutting the story short, माँ बहन की गाली देते हुए उसने कहा कि हिंदू रेफरीज ने सिख टीम को हराया. From a man who has never set his foot on Punjab, he has never been to Golden Temple, and he was such a gentle guy. Fast forward, घंटे तक हम चलते रहे, बातचीत चलती रही, और हमने उससे पूछा, he said something, हमारा काम बहुत जोर शोरों से बाहर हो रहा है और हम 4 साल के बाद हमारा एजुटेशन पूरा शुरू होगा. These are his words. That man is still alive, still around. And I asked him, "You mean to say Indian intelligence knows nothing about it?" फिर उसने माँ बहन की गाली देते हुए, तुम हिंदू लोग बेकार हो, तुम शांति के लिए तुम्हें जो करना होगा करोगे, लेकिन हम तो तुम्हारी लेके रखेंगे. These are his words. I will never forget that. So the point which I'm trying to make to you is that इसकी तैयारियां बहुत जोरों से हो रही हैं, बहुत दिनों से हो रही हैं. ये आज की घटना नहीं है. जिस तरह से 9/11 was not an accident, bombing of Kanishka was not an accident. This is a challenge to democracy. In the US, I have seen this matter degenerate, become more and more vocal, and more abusive of the democratic process. And I went to my doctor. The receptionist is a Sikh girl. I just told her Jai Ram Ji ki, thinking she was a Hindu. I did not know she was Sikh. Young girl. And she tells me, I can't say Jai Ram Ji ki. I'm not supposed to say. I'm a Sikh. I will say Sat Shri Akal. Aapko kehna ho to kaho. Think about it like this. The indoctrination and brainwashing has happened to such an extent that there is a group of Sikhs who are pre-partition time. They have the feeling of the Akhand Punjab. Today's is a brainwashed generation. I have no sympathy for the Khalistanis. Mistake me not. I despise Khalistanis. I like Sikhs. And I also want to say, just because I like Sikhs doesn't mean I'll have to like Khalistanis as well. I'm all for that part of the argument. It is going on worse. And I can narrate so many stories about individual interaction with a multi-millionaire guy who cut hair, cut beard, but he would always wear a puggy in an official function. He said, there I have to assert my Khalistan brotherhood. So this and the farmer agitation has brought this matter to the fore. सब उसमें नंगे हो गए. अब किसी को छुपाने की जरूरत नहीं है. मोहब्बत करेगी असर धीरे धीरे. अब पूरा होसर हो गया है. So those who are involved in it, they are out in the open. The democratic societies have to now confront that even. There are many more questions. So बलराज जी, मैं ये पूछना चाहूंगा आपसे जानना चाहूंगा, मैं पूछना तो छोड़िए, मैं जानना चाहूंगा आपसे कि इसकी रूट्स जो हैं बहुत डीप है. ये आज की बात नहीं है, बहुत डीप है. उस पर कुछ प्रकाश डालेंगे आप? Would you like to say something about it? In the mindset.
What I read and heard, the Khalistanis, they go back and they say, actually they were getting their Khalistan or a separate country. Mr. Jinnah was asking them to join Pakistan, where they will be granted certain rights and so on. The Britain asked them to seek their own country and so on, but it's all hogwash. I read the history. I never found a single reference to it. And the authority on this, Mr. Ishtiaq Ahmed, he wrote, I think, 2-3 books on it, including a book on Jinnah. And carnage in Punjab, which started before partition, He's very clear on it, and he brings out a lot of facts that no Khalistan was offered to the Sikhs. Yes, Mr. Jinnah wanted Sikhs to join so that he can have bigger pie of Punjab, maybe whole Punjab for Pakistan. But then he was not offering solid protections, something which will last after his lifetime. The only thing he told some Sikh leaders when they met, according to Mr. Ahmed, was that my word is the assurance. And the Sikh leaders who met, including Baldev Singh, they discussed among themselves after that this is not good enough. What will happen after him? He's not even ready to consider. That means there is no warranty of any kind to join Pakistan. And Sikhs were not going to join Pakistan because the community was more kind of knitted, intermingled with Hindu society at that time, even more than today. The families were half Hindus, half Sikhs. Intermarriages, although they are common today too, even this militancy has not separated both communities up to the level some militants would have liked. But back then, it was very much together. So at the partition time, seeking a Khalistan or a separate country, or the possibility of such, is just a hoax. You mentioned 77 incident in America. I also said that mid-70s, Jagjit Singh Chauhan visited Canada a couple of times. Also, USA came out with full-page advertisement in one of the national papers, I think New York Times or Washington Post in USA about Khalistan. But there were no takers. We must admit that it was mishandling of 1984, which resulted in Blue Star. I'm not saying the terrorist was right or government was right. I think both were responsible, and many other parties were responsible, including Akalis and Congress, to let that situation get out of control. But that operation, plus what happened after in Delhi after the killing of Mrs. Gandhi by two bodyguards, those two things actually really provided Khalistanis foothold in the Sikh community, and that's when this movement actually took off overseas. And also in Punjab, we have seen 10-15 years of terrorism in Punjab, and the main reason was those two big incidents, which actually were mismanaged by the people responsible at that time.
Okay, so how the democracy is managing this situation? Let's talk about Canada. Because I think Canada, what it has done is that it has kind of abdicated, and it has surrendered in front of these forces, the violent forces. It hasn't even concluded the trial of AI 182, or it has done some kind of what is called a hogwash of a trial. And that's only exacerbated the situation because there are a lot of people who want to live peacefully, and they are now kind of being steamrolled by these violent elements.
I mentioned that there was a systematic intelligence and surveillance failure before the bombing, but there were more systematic failures even after the bombing or during the process. For example, when M. Singh checked in the baggage on CP Air for Toronto, his ticket from Toronto to Delhi was not even confirmed, but his baggage, when he insisted, the airline agent loaded the baggage through check up to Delhi, which means from Toronto it will go forward to the next flight without the confirmation of the seat up to Delhi. And also in both cases, L. Singh and M. Singh, L. Singh checked in for CP Air to Narita, and M. Singh to Toronto CP Air connecting with Air India. Both passengers did not board. When a passenger is not on board, why the luggage has gone on board? That is a big question. That was a systematic failure again. When the luggage was transferred from Toronto CP Air to Air India, the X-ray machine was broken. So handheld device was used. they knew that Air India was under threat. High Commission of India conveyed to Government of Canada on 17th of May that there is such a threat. And Indian intelligence agencies also shared with Canadian intelligence agencies that there is a threat. But broken X-ray machine, then use the handheld device. The handheld device beeped a few times, but they ignored it. So the bomb proceeded all the way to the belly of that aircraft. And then when the bomb blast took place, Canadians failed to own this as a Canadian tragedy. The Prime Minister of the day, Mr. Brian Mulroney, called Rajiv Gandhi to express his condolences. They thought, or they felt, it's a Air India plane. Most of the people on board, they may be Canadian citizens or permanent residents, but they all belong to India. So they are brown skin, so it's somebody else's problem. So this persisted not for one government of Brian Mulroney, but for 20 years after the incident. Only in 2005, the Prime Minister of the day, Mr. Paul Martin, he visited Cork County in Ireland, where the memorial was, where he said that it is a Canadian tragedy. Mr. Harper, when he came in 2006, he appointed Justice John Major Commission, but then government couldn't do much except to look into the systematic failures where the weaknesses were and why they succeeded in this bombing. You cannot hold like two criminal trials, one in which Bagdi and Malik they were let go due to lack of evidence, and then you start another commission of inquiry on criminal grounds. So it was not that. So it was Mr. Harper who ordered that Justice John Major Commission inquiry, and it came out with a very, very large report and 64 recommendations. So Mr. Harper in 2010 very clearly stated that it is a made in Canada tragedy. Canadian citizens planned it. Canadian citizens executed it. And a majority of the people who died on board, they were Canadians. And that was the day Canada apologized to Air India families. Mr. Harper also came out very strongly to suggest to his fellow politicians across the board that we should not promote such elements. We should keep distance from such elements who are advocating violence of this nature. But today, even his party today, under new leader, is not abiding by the guidelines set by Mr. Harper at that point. So what Khalistanis have done, Canadian system is a very kind of loose system. It leaves the people to run itself kind of thing. So I'm talking about the political system. So they have made inroads into all the political parties due to the system. I'm sure in America is very close to it also, because they hold primaries to run for different positions. So in Canada, if somebody wants to run for say provincial parliament or for federal parliament, every riding association runs a kind of an election of a candidate. So they select a candidate by voting, and the people who are member of that party from that particular riding vote for the candidates. So the system is, if I want to run for a constituency, I will go out and hire the membership, recruit the membership, whichever word you want to use, pay the fee for them, transport them, and they will come and vote for me, and I'll become the candidate. So that is how they made inroads into all three political parties. The leaders are elected or selected in a very same way. Some of the parties hold direct elections to the leader, where people can go out and recruit, their supporters can go out and recruit new members, and then they vote for the new leader. Or the riding associations recruit members, and then they elect delegates, which go to the convention floor and vote for the candidate of their choice for that party's leader. So that is how the Khalistanis won a lot of influence in all three parties. At this point, NDP, the third largest national party, its leader is Jagmeet Singh, who is a very well-known pro-Khalistani. He's product of Sikh activist network, which was a youth group which they say now been disbanded, but its affiliation with the with militancy are very well known. So he and his brother both are product of that militant organization, and his brother is a provincial member of parliament from Ontario. As far as Trudeau is concerned, not only Trudeau, even 3-4 leaders before Trudeau, the leaders of Liberal Party, when they were elected, the Khalistani and pro-Khalistanis, they played a very important role to support their leadership bid.
Okay, and I guess Vibhuti Ji, I think it's something similar in the USA, where I think a large number of these radical elements, whether they are Islamists or they are Khalistanis, they seem to find their way much more disproportionately than the other people, than the more peaceful people.
Absolutely right. And Balraj Ji was talking about the fact that how they take advantage of the democratic process. और आपने भी वो सवाल पहले पूछा था. What do people in democracy do now? So, this is the classic favorite statement of mine, that criminals take advantage of the compassion of the society and the loopholes of the law, break the law, they exploit the weakness to fulfill their own agenda. Their agenda is not yours and mine agenda. Their agenda is something else. And they find heaven in all these democratic processes where we are remarkably tolerant and accepting. So what the democracies can do, in my opinion, people like you and I, we are discussing this matter. We pay tribute to the lost lives of the Air India crashes that happened. At the same time, we realize that 9/11 happened also. There was no connectivity. Balraj Ji said the police did not report the matter. Links were not established. Dots were not connected. And these things continue even today in the name of civil rights, in the name of liberties, and whatever else. So the question here is that, as we remember Mr. Shyama Prasad Mukherjee as well, look at Bengal, what is happening. Some kind of a history is being repeated there, or tried to be repeated there. So as a democracy, what I would do now is, I would seek your opinion, Balraj Ji, is there somewhere along the line, remember Rajiv Gandhi, he challenged the Khalistanis when he came to Washington, D.C., if you want Khalistan, go to Kashmir, because your Tirthastan is right there. Don't talk about India. We are not confronting the evil, and that's the weakness of the system and the process. We are not strengthening the right to live. We are not strengthening the process where the criminals take advantage of that. So let me take one example. Why is nobody asking this question of Khalistanis? Why are you fighting in India? Why are you taking the help of Pakistanis? Your all territories are sitting there. Why don't you demand Khalistan in Punjab, that is in Kashmir, in Pakistan? Why, if perhaps you did that, maybe India will support you there. So, the question is, if you want all the territories that Lahore or whatever is the capital of Khalistan is sitting in Pakistan, why are you fighting here? But that's where I see the cowardice in them. Because they know that in Pakistan, they will have a direct fight with the army and the internal forces, security forces, whereas in India, they can get away with in the name of democracy and fundamental right. What is the challenge in the US, Sanjay Ji and Balraj Ji and Canada and other civil societies? They are using the phrase democratic aspirations of people. And in my humble opinion, if you permit me to use the language, it is the big BS that democracies must contend with, because that challenges the concept of a country itself. And I have said this to many US senators and congressmen. When somebody told me several years ago, why don't you give Khalistan to Sikhs and Kashmir to Muslims and matter is resolved? So I countered them by saying, hey, if all the blacks of this country assemble in Montana and declare that as a separate country, would you let it happen? No way. I said, if Hawaii declares independence, if Alaska declares independence, would you let it happen? No way. I said, why the hell don't you leave us to ourselves? We will resolve our problem.
Whereas in the United States, they can legitimately secede if they want.
They're legitimate. Yes, Texas and California are trying to do that. They legitimately secede. Both the states are very annoyed and unhappy with the way Washington conducts itself. So there is a reason, there is an issue here. And the democracy and democratic forces and people like us have to talk about it. Where is the end? Where is the limit? Where do we draw the line? That's what I say. So I would say we must expose the Khalistanis. That they don't even know, they're brainwashed. The generation that is talking about Khalistan, they don't even know their history perhaps. They only read a prepared text that hame apna Khalistan chahiye. That's it. They don't even know the history. They don't even know perhaps that Pakistanis and the Muslims of some era killed their gurus, burnt them alive and boiled them live. Let that history be told. We don't talk about it. Balraji, I want to hear from you on this matter. How can we expose that?
I'll just intervene on this. I'll intervene for a minute.
Sure.
There's a beautiful book by a gentleman, Harjot Singh Oberoi. It's called Construction of Religious Boundaries. I'm sure Balraji would know Harjot Singh Ji because our common friend Puneet Singh Sani, he mentioned that he knows Harjot Singh Ji. So Harjot Singh Oberoi wrote a beautiful book. It's called Construction of Religious Boundaries. And in that, he traces this entire phenomenon, how it began. And it was actually around 1878. And the British played a very large role in this. Unfortunately, what has happened is that even after our independence in 1947, we inherited a colonial mentality, and our powers that be, who were the great colonials, led by Mr. Nehru, they never thought of correcting any of the narratives that were set for us by the British. In fact, they only went about the task of strengthening those very fault lines and actually telling us that whatever we knew of our tradition from 300, 400, 500, 1,000, thousands of years, that was all wrong, and that needed to be discarded, and whatever the British had told us was just perfect. And that is how we have gotten into this morass. I did a session with Professor Jagbir Singh, where he not only traced this phenomenon, he traced the common, what is called Jnana Parampara and Vansha Parampara and a Vyavahar Parampara of the Hindus and Sikhs. And of course, anybody has, just as Balraji mentioned, that all the families were shared, still are shared. But the Khalistanis will have none of it because they force their narrative down everybody's throat. And in democracies, the peaceful majority is always the one that has to bear the brunt of this onslaught, because the state never comes to the rescue of the peaceful majority. It always seems to side with the violent and aggressive minority. Balraji, would you comment on that?
Well, when we look at the situation, you are right to trace the roots of the idea back to 18th century or something. So roots of any idea can go back 100, 250 years or whatever, but the roots does not matter. The ideas come and ideas go. It is the fertile ground which sprouts the crop. So in Punjab, although we suffered that decade and a half of terrorism and so on, but people of Punjab have rejected Khalistan very clearly during a number of elections in the past 30 or odd years. Mr. Simranjit Singh Mann, who was running for elections on the name of Khalistan, he and his candidates lost deposits. So what I feel is the idea does not hurt. It is the fertile ground, if provided the circumstances, that is when it's hurt, if it's not controlled properly. Secondly, the ideas and a demand of something does not hurt. It is the militancy, the hatred, the fundamentalism and terrorism which hurts. If Khalistan movement is going on and they're asking for Khalistan, they are propagating here and there, people won't pay much attention to it the way they haven't in Punjab so far. But if they pick up the gun and they start shooting, that is when it hurts. It hurted when they placed 2 bombs for the aircraft and we lost so many lives. So terrorism should be rejected outright and completely in all societies. And all societies should draw a red line, not to tolerate terrorism, not to tolerate this kind of militancy, not to tolerate this kind of hatred. I think that is the first safety net. And the second safety net is if there are problems in any country, in any society, they should be addressed properly in a very timely manner. So ideas are not going to hurt if somebody is not taking the wrong route to force that idea with the gun. Even when we look at, I said in Punjab, Khalistanis have no support. Even overseas, when I look at the community, there is one very clear measure we look at, and we don't see much support of Khalistanis in the Sikh community here. But by the second look, if we have a very close look, is there opposition to the Khalistanis and Sikh community in Canada? No, the opposition has completely disappeared. So when there is no opposition, although they have very little support, say some people say 2%, some people say 4%, some people say maybe 5%. So the 5% will carry the day because there is no opposition to it. And then the next culprits are politicians in every country. They need votes. They need vote of a devil. They need vote of anybody. I have narrated how the story how the votes count in Canada. In India is somewhat a little different, but the vote has the same value. Look at the farmers' agitation, which is, in my opinion, totally a fake agitation. There is no valid excuse for it. But look at how the political parties are manipulating it. How they are using this as a stick against Narendra Modi. Like there could be a lot of wrong things with Narendra Modi and his government. But why would they address it with the farmers' agitation, which clearly is supported by a lot of anarchists, a lot of separatists from overseas, and a lot of Naxalites and so on. And then they are not ready to negotiate with the government. They are setting conditions which nobody has ever seen, that only if you reject these 3 laws, only then we will negotiate. But the political parties are using that agitation to foment trouble. So the politicians are also big culprits in every society. Probably that is the big weakness of a democracy, and Canada is very much same. So somehow the politicians should act more responsibly. They should have Lakshman Rekha somewhere that they're not going to cross certain boundaries when they seek to oppose their opponent or unseat their opponent. It has to be there has to be some sort of moral or political standard of that.
You're quite right there. You're
absolutely
right.
Correct, Balraji. Absolutely correct. I totally agree with you. Yes. But the Lakshmo, that is the problem. That's exactly the issue with democracies today. And we all agree with that the criminal elements take full advantage. The politician takes advantage, needs the vote, and there is a collusion. Some kind of a thing happens there, that the whole fabric collapses. It is happening in the US, left, right, and center. It happens everywhere, regardless of whatever system it is there. And unless and until you and I create that, aversion to the whole thing, like it is happening. And technology is a big enabler today to reach out to the people of the world around. Things will not change. With the violence of one kind of a thing or the other will keep happening. So the question here is, how do we stop this? And the stopping of this is only through way of exposing it to the fullest extent. So I would ask every Khalistani, go to Punjab, go to Pakistan and demand your country. This is a very tiny land here. This is nothing. This में यहाँ तो एक झंडा गाड़ने की भी जगह नहीं है आपको. करना है तो उधर जाइए. There has to be an education. People are brainwashed into believing one thing or the other. So it's a very frustrating conversation, because it is obvious that the system is failing itself. And to that end, unless and until we have to arise to stop this, otherwise it will continue. But hey, as you rightly said, ideas are ideas. Usko hota kya hai, then it is important. But it all begins from the idea. So somebody germinates the idea, and somebody cultivates that idea, and then somebody abuses that idea. So this is where we are in the abusive stage of an idea. An abusive stage of an idea has to be curtailed. There is no choice about that.
If I may ask Balraj, what would you suggest the way out in Canada?
I think there is no simple answer to that question. I have thought over this over the years, but I failed to find a solid answer for this. But I have seen a lot of those Khalistanis who started this movement, either they are gone from this world due to their age, or they are old now, or they are been sidelined, and young generation has taken over the Khalistan movement. So when government of India tried to start dialogue with them, I think back in 2015 and so on, to abolish the blacklist, this and that, and invited them to visit India to see for themselves what is there. Government felt everything will be okay when these people 10, 20, 30, 50 or whatever from different countries will come. But they made a big mistake, because they, in my opinion, they invited the dead wood. Those old people who were invited from different countries to come after abolishing the blacklist, they did not matter in Khalistan movement anymore, because the young generation had taken over by then. I would say second and third generation is very active now in this Khalistan movement. So a lot of that youth which has taken over this Khalistan movement, for whatever reasons, is very ignorant about intricacies of Indian societies. The older generation, which was fighting for Khalistan, they knew the society they came from Punjab or India. They knew the makeup of their village, some Sikh families, some Mazdoor families, some carpenters, some people running the shops, baniyas and so on, and some other caste. They knew how the society was, and they knew there was no discrimination with them. If there was some discrimination, probably it was them as a land-owning class doing with others. So they knew that, although they were demanding Khalistan, but they knew the makeup of the society they came from. But this young generation does not have that vision. They don't know how the Indian society was, whether there was truly some sort of bad treatment with the Sikhs in Punjab or in India. They don't know. So whatever they are told, they believe in it. I will tell you a very short story, that a cousin of mine who lives in USA, he came at a very young age. He's a bit of fundamentalist. We visited India 5-6 years ago. I took him to my village, and he was always talking about this mistreatment of Sikhs. I asked the taxi guy to swing the car to the Mazdoor area, where those Harijans and Christians live, and the conditions they live in, the roads and so on. So I gone through my village and showed him those areas, and then I took him to the graveyard. I showed him the one graveyard where the Zimidars, the Kisans, the farmers, the Jats, they burn their dead, and the other one where Harijans and Christians either bury them or burn them. And he said, "Why is this?" I said, "Well, that is the way it is. Now you tell me, who is discriminating against who?" I took him to the village Gurdwara, where there was Sangrand on that day, and there were some poor children laborers and dayyas sitting outside Gurdwara. And I took him inside the Gurdwara. I said, you see these children sitting here? He said, Paji, why are they sitting out there? I said, technically, there is no casteism in Sikhism. These children should be in Gurdwara. Even if they came for Prashad or Langar, they should be in Gurdwara. But we practice something else and we preach something else. They are children of the poor. They are not allowed inside. So these people, the young generation which has taken over the Khalistan movement now, they don't know this. So they are more dangerous. Ignorance is a lot more dangerous. The old Khalistanis were not as dangerous as these today. So somehow there has to be some sort of education about what kind of society or what kind of discrimination existed from all sides. I'm not suggesting that Sikhs discriminate against Mazdoors and laborers and untouchables and so on. It existed in Indian society, but that's one way of telling them who is discriminating at what level in the country. Just saying, making excuse that Hindus discriminate against Sikhs is not good enough. There is this cross discrimination all over the place, which is decreasing by the day with the education. But this is what these young people should know. And the second thing these young people must know, when we look at Operation Blue Star, the Khalistanis managed to build personality cults of heroes. Many of those terrorists who pulled people out of the buses and killed them, trains and killed them, gone to the pattas, bricklands and killed them. Their personalities are built here like heroes. You search their name, and something will pop up that this person was very brave, he done this, he done that, and finally he was cornered by so many Indian forces. He killed 15-20 of them before he died. So these personality cults, false, fake personality cults are built around these personalities, and these children overseas, they follow them. They think, oh, maybe this person A or B, oh, he was a Sikh, he was a brave, he done this and that. But there is the other side of the coin. When you flip that coin and you search the information what that terrorist done, you will find out how many innocent lives he took, how many robberies he committed under whatever circumstances. So that information is not readily available to the youth overseas who has taken over this Khalistan movement. They don't know that there is other story, other side of it. So somehow that other side of it, the other story, should also be available, should also be told, or if somebody try to research, it should pop up.
Excellent. A very, very good narration. The narrative building and the personality cult, countering the personality cult. I think he summed it up very beautifully.
Very, very beautifully. And I wanted to add to that, education is definitely a necessity. And Balraj also cautioned that we have to expose the truth as well. That we are not doing. So, that the true history must come out. The truth must come out. I mean, India, we don't even talk about 1971, one of the most glorious victories of Indian Army. We don't talk about it. Likewise, we have the tendency, our system has a tendency to push the things under the carpet. Iske baare mein baat mat karo, because it hurts people's sentiments. So we become too soft in dealing with the harsh realities. And that's where I think, in my opinion, it has to be educate and expose. Both the things have to move simultaneously. That's what I was talking about. The youngsters have no clue about what is exactly
absolutely.
Absolutely no clue.
I think I'll pause at this note because I think we have questions from the audience which they would like to pose to Balraj ji and also to Vibhuti ji. So I would request everybody to please subscribe the channel, like and share the video, and contribute to our cause if you may. And questions and answers. Okay, one next, Sanjay ji. There is an interview of Subramaniam Swamiji who goes on to say that he considered Bhindranwale as a sant and went to add that the Blue Star operation was a Soviet idea which was pushed forward through Surjeet of CPI. Throw light, please. The question is actually directed at me. So, what I will do is that let me just plead with you that I generally avoid answering questions related to Subramaniam Swamiji. The reason is that over his long career, he has said so many things in different way to different people in different circumstances, in different situations, which often contradict each other. And of course, I am nobody to comment on the grand conspiracy theories that a lot of people bring about. So I would, on that note, say sorry. I do not want to respond to what Subramaniam Swamiji might have said. That's the safest course for me. Next. Mithilesh Kumar, Khalistanis have no popular support. Why BJP is shying away from representing Sikhs in Punjab and all other parties are in the fray? Balaji, would you like to take that question?
See, I'm not very familiar with Punjab politics or updated with it because I left Punjab about 45 years ago. So sitting 10,000 kilometers away, I'm only I can peek from outside, and I feel if BJP wants to run in Punjab, I think they have good pockets because every political party in every country in every province they usually have some strong pockets, some weaknesses somewhere. And politics in Punjab is kind of segregated on caste lines, on religion lines also. So Akalis are trying to win over untouchables by forming this alliance with BSP. So BJP probably will do better in cities where a lot of Hindu population lives. And also BJP is trying to build some base among the Sikh population through their policies or through attracting some leaders, which they have done in last couple of weeks. So I don't know the final situation which way it will go, but I think there will be not 1, 2, or 3, but maybe 4 or 5 way fight in Punjab. So anybody who can get around 20% will make a dent in that kind of situation where there is 5-way fight, and BJP probably stand good chance of becoming a strong party. I'm not saying forming a government, but a strong party in that 5-way fight, which looks to be in the making.
Yes, you're quite right. I think the situation is pretty complicated as of now. Sorry?
Would you allow me a supplementary question since to Balraj, because he talked about the caste element? I only wanted to inform all the audience and viewers of this show that there is a major institution in the US which has absolutely debunked the entire accusation of equality labs of caste discrimination in India or in the United States. We will do a full show on that actually, because that's a major endorsement from a major institution. The caste thing is overplayed, totally wrong. Even equality labs has been trashed. That's a good news. I'll share more on that later, but I wanted to say that everything in India is played upon with the caste thing. And Western media supports that. And we have to debunk it at every single opportunity that we get. Thank you.
Anyway, he's talking in the context of politics, and politics,
right,
of course, you can't deny the element of caste.
Not denying politics. The way the politics of it is being. That's what
caste discrimination is different, and caste in politics is different.
Yes,
they're two different things. Okay, let's move to the next question. Bharat Bhushan, Sikhs are afraid to confront extremists. Well, and this is what Balraj actually said. So I think he's only repeating what you said, Balraj.
No, actually, if you look at reality in the beginning, the Sikhs fought the terrorists very bravely in Punjab and overseas. If terrorism in Punjab was defeated, it was because the Sikh policemen and the Sikh at large, they did fight them. In Canadian context, I mentioned that the moderate Sikhs at some point got tired of it because the Khalistanis were too organized, and the moderates could not garner that much support, or there was not much reward for opposing them, and the Khalistanis probably felt there are more rewards politically to unite and kind of expand their roots and influence in politics. So slowly they became unchallenged. That process I only relate to Canadian politics, not otherwise.
Okay. Thanks for clarifying. It makes Khalistan was a direct outcome of Hindu weakening. Even our organs and their enzymes begin to eat our insides, the body becomes weak. Only in Hindu strength is the solution to our problems. Okay, that's one viewpoint, but I think it's the way things have moved doesn't just depend on that. It is the narrative building part that we have ignored. That's according to me. If any of you want to supplement that, please.
No, not me.
Totally agree with that.
Okay. Next, Arnav Kumar. Indian Ministry of External Affairs is also clueless. Jaishankar is Pappu 2.0. I'm sorry, sir. I do not agree with you, Arnav Kumarji. Certainly not Pappu 2.0. Pappu is a highly exalted state, which normal lay people will find difficult to achieve. So please do not exalt ordinary people like Jaishankar to that state. Papudam is something exceptional. There is also radicalization in Indian Sikh youth. They certainly look down upon us Hindus.
I'm not in India, but I would put it in a different way, that radicalization may be happening, but there's a very interesting trend that is going on in Punjab. The conversion of Sikhs to Christianity and asylum seeking in America. There are two, America and Canada. And unless and until you show yourself as the victim, you can't claim asylum here. So, there is a big racket being played out here. There are some people I know in New York who are promoting conversion, and they are all told one thing: we will sponsor you, but whenever there is an anti-India agitation, you have to stand and support. There are many ways of claiming that asylum seeking going on, and that's why radicalization and the conflict is created as if they are part of minorities exposed and brutalized by Hindus. I won't say they look down upon us Hindus. They don't. They say they are trying to take advantage of their position.
See, I'll just add to that a little bit. I spent some time in Punjab during 2014 general elections. I was the observer for Anandpur Sahib Lok Sabha constituency, which spread across 4 districts: Mohali and Ropar, Hoshiarpur, and Nawashahar. 4 districts. I was in charge of these 4 districts for elections. And I was amazed to see the graffiti everywhere about visas and about your TOEFL and English speaking and migration and assistance to migration. And then I found out that somehow what has happened, it seems to be in this whole this Angrezi Sikhi, which is, I call that McAuliffism, or the Angrezi Sikh movement that started in late 19th century. That has actually deracinated the youth to an extent that they actually think of themselves as an heir to McAuliffe or something. And everybody wants to migrate. I mean, they don't want to, they are landlords in Punjab, and they are happy migrating and becoming taxi driver in Canada and UK and Australia. So They're not interested in studying. They're not interested in going to those very, very proud vocations like the army, the sports, in which Punjab always used to excel. It used to be the granary of the hockey players, the football players, the great army tradition. All that is gone. And everybody is just lining up to go to Canada, Australia, or the UK. And even the areas are divided. So the Maja area is UK, the Doaba is US and Canada, and the Malwa is for Australia. So very, very strange. But that's what I found. I found out because I worked there for about a month and a half. Next. One is, let's articulate our views so that facts are crystal clear, but immigrated Indian views do not matter, period. Of course they do matter because a lot of fertile ground is over there. So definitely they do matter.
And it also matters in another reference, because let's be careful about one thing. We may or may not pay attention to the details, but believe it or not, in many countries, including United States, many scenarios are cultivated. People are learning from intelligence agencies' inputs that if you want something to happen, what do you need to do? Scenarios are created, scenarios are built, shared. So that's why we cannot ignore certain things. And, to say this, that emigrated Indians' views do not matter, Sanjay ji, you gave him a good response. I had a stronger response, but I'll hold my tongue.
You're the directly affected party and
Yes.
the neutral one.
Yes, both. Thank you. Well said. Thank you very much for saying that.
Okay. Vibhuti ji, on 1971, only Tathagat Roy has written an account. No one else.
Yes.
Why do you say no one else? I mean, I can point to you tens of accounts which have been written about 1971. I don't know what you're talking about. I'm sorry. Again, I do not agree. Next. एक नायक ऐसा प्रतीत हो रहा है कि विश्व की सारी समस्या का जड़ हिंदुओं की चुप्पी और कमजोरी है। जिस दिन हिंदू अपना डंडा चलाने लगेगा, विश्व की कई समस्याओं का समाधान होगा। मैं आपको ऑफर करता हूं कि आप डंडा चलाइए, आगे निकलिए, हम सब आपको फॉलो करेंगे।
Sanjay ji, this is a very nice question. It's a hilarious one. Huh? Oh, my mother used to say, "Raah dikha aur aage chal."
जो राह दिखाए वो आगे चले।
So the question here is, I have said this and we have talked about it. The time for India and our Sanatan Dharma has arrived. In a way, he's right. हमारी चुप्पी हमारी कमजोरी है. We let things remain, or to use the slang, not the name, Ram Bharose. Because we leave things to destiny, but destiny is designed by action. We make our own destinies. That's all I'll say.
In some ways, it's okay. Even if you look at this whole Khalistani problem,
right?
We fail to stress the Sanatani roots of the Sikhism.
Correct, absolutely.
And that separation spread to such an extent that today, I think a large number of Sikhs, if you tell them that, okay, we have common ancestors and common heritage, common Jnana Parampara, they take offense. And that is something that, because people didn't talk about it. Whereas there are whole, you have Nirankaris, you have Nirmala, you have Udasis, you have Nanak Panthis, you have so many traditions within the Sikhism. But the only one that seems to resonate today is the Tat Khalsa variety. That is only as old as 1878 in its present form. So in that sense, it's right. But if he wants to take up a danda and move on, I will be very keen to follow him. Cosmic lover, sir, I was assuming Khalistani mindsets are less in numbers in Punjab, but I found in some of my friends and defending also, we speculating that nationalist Sikhs are more than Khalistanis. Of course they are. I have no doubt about it. And I do not know which area you belong to because your cosmic name does not reveal your location. So I cannot comment on that. But since I have had the benefit of staying in Punjab for quite some time and interacting deeply, I can definitely say the nationalist Sikhs are definitely more than Khalistanis. And Balraj quoted Simranjeet Singh Man's story. I will tell you the exact numbers of votes that he got. I think the total number of votes polled were over 2 crore. And he got 77,077 votes, his party, all told. So, next, Dr. Deepak Guru, Mr. Balraj Deol, you call BSP followers as untouchables. This is shameful as they belong to lower caste. You should apologize. Don't be so sensitive, Mr. Deepak Guru. Don't be that sensitive. Okay. Next. Oneness. Canada has gone for a 6 and will have a parliament with supporters for terrorists. It already has. That's the message India has to convey strongly instead of playing on the back foot. I think Mr. Modi did convey a very strong message when Mr. Trudeau came visiting. It couldn't have been stronger. Let's not expect anything from the government. That also we cannot rule out. We have to keep expecting things from the government.
Canada will soon see a civil war between the Islamists and Khalistanis. That also is possible because power grab is so much in the open.
I don't really understand. I think probably Balraj can answer. I was checking the demographic figures, and it seems the number of Sikhs is about 0.9%, and the number of Muslims is about 0.7% of the population. And yet they seem to have such a disproportionately large influence. How does that happen?
Well, that is what I was mentioning earlier, that in order to have to get elected, you have to get nominated for certain political party, and the nomination process is up for grabs. That is where you manipulate the process. There are, I think, about 9 Muslim MPs in Canadian Parliament at this point, and 16 or 17 Sikhs in the Parliament. So this manipulation of nomination system actually is the root of their success. If I tell you, I live in Brampton. We usually say Toronto because Toronto is the largest city. I'm by the side of Toronto. It's a small town, Brampton. The population about 700,000 officially. Unofficially, I think it's close to 900,000. A lot of illegals and students here also. So there are 5 parliamentary seats in Brampton. So all 5 MPs from Brampton are Sikhs. And the Sikh population in Brampton, different estimates, is in the range of 20-25%. So 20-25% population, and all 5 MPs are Sikhs. That is how this nomination process or manipulation of nomination process works. That manipulation process gives success to organized groups, the way the Muslims have done it, Sikhs have done it. Certainly, the Khalistanis are at the forefront of Sikhs. And if you look at the indigenous communities, the native Indians, their population is around 1.6 million, and they don't have anywhere even half of that representation in Canadian Parliament or provincial parliaments. Their influence is very, very minimum. A lot of their areas, they don't have modern amenities, they don't have running water, they don't have proper roads, they don't have proper health and education facilities. They are making noise whatever they can to whatever level, but the government don't pay attention. but they pay attention to those who matter, who are organized, who have blocks of votes. And just if you permit me, I would like to respond to the earlier comment by a viewer who said that I called somebody untouchable or some other. I always think of how to refer to those classes, downtrodden classes in Indian society or in Punjab. I actually narrated a story where I said they've been mistreated. Their Kabristan is separate. So I'm expressing more sympathy with them, but I have to use the words from the vocabulary, the ongoing vocabulary, which I know. I may not know the words which he would prefer me to use. So I would probably request him to refer to those words which I should refer or use in the future so that nobody is offended.
Okay. R. Luthra. Khalistanis are homeless Atankawadi. Point them out, revoke their citizenship, OCI, PIO, red list them from all Indian airports, declare them as Atankawadis internationally, no entry, Jai Hind. Well, I think a lot of them have been red listed and blacklisted. What's your opinion, Balaji?
Well, I think the person making the comment has gone to the great extreme to declare everybody, quote unquote, kind of untouchable Khalistani or untouchable Indian background person. I won't go that far, but if every country has a mechanism for its own security, Canada has the same thing, and America has it. America and Canada, they even have no fly list. It is much stronger than blacklist. No fly list means you cannot even fly over American airspace if you are listed in that list. You may be traveling from Canada to Mexico, but if you are in that flight, that flight cannot take off from Toronto to Mexico because there is a person who's on no fly list of USA, and the aircraft is scheduled to fly over American airspace. So every country has security mechanisms. So India do have that kind of mechanism. If Indian government feels or security agencies feel that it should be further strengthened, or Indian people feel it should be further strengthened, they should probably press their government to do so. So that option is there.
I do not know the immigration laws, but I do believe, in my opinion, is that one of the real choke points or the action points would be for the government of India to notify United States immigration and Canadian immigration that all those people who are seeking asylum for reasons of political persecution, they are fake. Government of India must make a public statement on that. And, we must, like as the saying goes, that you have to expose the attorneys who are fighting these cases. Let's investigate. Where in India are they being persecuted that they are seeking asylum, and for what? Running away for what and for whom? Unless and until we address the root cause of it, the rest of it is good. This is an extreme measure, no doubt. As the saying goes, extreme situations demand extreme measures.
Okay. Karan Singh, I think this is a representation problem. How come Sikh representation in foreign parliaments became a problem for you, sir? Well, we were only answering a question. There was a question. So I think this question should rightly be addressed to the person asking the question. If the question is asked, then I think we should not, in the normal course, are obliged to respond. Next. गुरुजी बिना डंडा चलाए गोपाल पाठक कैसे बने? चलाओ ना, डंडा चलाओ और भी कोई बहुत कुछ चलाओ. हमने मना कब किया है? लेकिन हम तो ये कह रहे हैं कि आप चलाओ, हम आपके पीछे चलेंगे. Thank you, Sanjay ji and Vibhuti ji, on the emigrated Indians answer. Okay. Next. Maybe it's time that the Poles and Jews in Canada take a leaf from the ruling Polish government and the Israelis respectively. Well, yes. Next. Amar Sareen, idea of Khalistan is used for playing victim card in order to get immigration to Western countries. That's what Vibhuti ji is saying. That's exactly what he said. Next. Shankadeep goes, J.K. Rowling gave huge donation to Khalsa Aid and then the group organized another fake farmers protest. Why is government of India allowing such Khalistani organization to function in India? Well, yeah, I guess you got a point there.
Absolutely.
I think there's definite point there. Agreed. Mithilesh Kumar, some Pakistani elements are circulating the theory that Sikh gurus and their children were killed at the behest of Hindu baniyas. Any of you heard it? Not till
Not
now.
me. Not to me.
Not that now that you say it. We'll find out. Balraji, did you hear of it?
Yes, there are a lot of stories about it. Whenever they find a Hindu name in some of those incidents, they blame it on Hindus. I think when they look at the killing of Guru Gobind Singh's children, two younger ones, who were arrested by Subhas Rahand and later killed, they blame it on Rasoya. I think Gangu, his name, if I'm not wrong. So they connect him to the Rasoya, who happens to be a Hindu. Then they say, well, he was the one who kind of became greedy for the wealth or reward and got them arrested by the Subhas Rahand. So they do use that kind of scenarios or situations, which may or may not be true all the way. Like you cannot connect one person's deception at one point to the whole religion, where you have stories that there were a lot of Hindus among all of actually 5 were Hindu, beloved ones were Hindus, or Panch Pyaras, they were Hindus. Nobody will go out and give credit that 5 beloved ones were all Hindus from different parts of India, but they will mention one Rasoya to prove their point that Hindus are enemies of Sikhs from the very beginning. Yes, that is taking place.
And we see, this is the important part. The Panch Pyaras were all Hindus. How many Hindus know about it, and how many Sikhs know about it? So education and exposure
Well, I think you have to. Sorry to interrupt you. You have to go further back. All the gurus were Hindus. I mean,
all the gurus were Hindus. Absolutely. Sabka naam hi Guru Govind. Guru Govind naam hi Krishna Bhagwan ka hai. What is the dispute?
Even in Guru Granth Sahib, the name that occurs the maximum number of times is Hari, and the second one is Ram.
Right.
And the third one is Govind. The fourth one is Murari. And Vahe Guru comes only 13 times. Those are all facts. But then they spin the narrative in a different way. We have to keep confronting it. Next. Raghavendra, yes. Canada appointed a Khalistani as a defense minister. Questions 370 removals, CAA and farm laws when India is declaring Canada as an enemy state. I don't think that's enough to warrant labeling a country as an enemy state. And I think the demarches are always there. The protests and demarches and other things are all there. Just for your information, India hasn't declared even Pakistan as an enemy state till now. So I think on that parameter, Canada will find it almost impossible to go that far. Rakesh Ori, caption on a 70s cartoon, Khalistan is only in their heads. Aren't antics of Khalistanis and continuing to prove the truth in this statement? By the way, Mr. Rakesh Ori is also from Toronto. Next. Krishna Sundar. Canada's Supreme Court says truth is no defense of free speech when it comes to hate speech. What should Hindus do to defend themselves from lawsuit by ROP and Khalistanis if they are at the very bottom of the intersectional hierarchy? Now, there we go into a totally different terrain, and that is wokeism. So, for wokeism, we'll have to have a different session, Krishna Sundarji. We have had quite a few in the past, but that's definitely merits more sessions, I'm sure. Kapil, which Gurudwara is out of the shackles of Khalistanis in Toronto or any other community center where Punjabis who love Hindustan can collaborate? Raji.
While most of the major Gurdwaras in Canada, whether it's Toronto, Vancouver, or Montreal or other cities, they are under the control of one Khalistani faction or the other one. They are all under the control of Khalistanis. That is their big strength. They took over those Gurdwaras in the early days of militancy after June '84, and they are still managing those Gurdwaras. Many more Gurdwaras propped up, and they are also under their control. But there are smaller Gurdwaras everywhere, especially Gurdwaras which we call the Gurdwaras managed by Sampradas. For example, there are some Nanaksar Gurdwaras by Nanaksar Samprada. They have further several factions, 2, 3 of them. So in Toronto, I think there are 3 different Nanaksar Sampradas. They have Gurdwaras. There are some Ravidasiya Gurdwaras. There is one Valmiki Gurdwara here. There are some other Gurdwaras like North York Sikh Temple here. If we look at Toronto, some Ramgadiya Gurdwaras. They are not in that league of pro-Khalistanis. That situation is true everywhere in other parts of Canada, like Calgary, Vancouver, and so on.
Krishna Sundar, earlier in the pandemic, Canada ignored Pfizer and Moderna to team up with China to produce Sinochem vaccine that ended up as a disaster within 3 months. Looks like Trudeau's governance has a blind spot as big as China. Yes, that does seem like. Anyway, Trudeau is a legend in his own way. Next. Oriental Arms. This is a propaganda battle. $1 billion budget for each country and several channels in US, Canada, and UK, and the influencers bought and paid for. Please include us also in them. We will win back our brethren in one generation. A lackluster approach will lead nowhere. Yes, I guess we need some out-of-the-box solution, and this could be one. Gauri Dani, does keeping Khalistan movement benefit the West as well to keep India disturbed apart from Pakistan? Vibhuti Ji, what do you say to this?
No, not at all. I don't think, the offshoots are in India itself. So it's right there. West may be taking advantage of that, but I don't think the Khalistan movement has that kind of a broad support from any other government other than Trudeau. I won't even say Canadian government. I will only say Trudeau. He loves to do Bhangra, that's it. Perhaps he loves the dance.
Well, his government won't run without NDP.
Right.
Tech ops, what is the source of funding for Khalistanis? It seems that is one of the important factors fueling the movement. Balraj, your question.
Well, I have mentioned earlier that the Gurdwaras, the big Gurdwaras are under control, one faction or the other. And Gurdwaras are very big community institutions in Sikh community and also source of a lot of income and donations. Certain managements, if they want to divert those donations for separatist cause, they can. And there are examples in the past that they have done it. So that is one way of financing. And then there are very rich Sikh businessmen who are very open to give donations. And I won't mention any names, but I'm privy to such information that some business houses have contributed for the separatist cause and also for political manipulation of certain candidates running for different levels of government. They give them donations very, very handsomely. And on top of that, the drug trade is very much in play in Pakistan. When we look at the drugs coming from Pakistan to Punjab, to India and other states, and also a lot of people overseas in America and in Canada, a lot of them are involved in drug trade. and a lot of that money they do donate to the Khalistani organizations also. I'm also privy to that information from certain quarters in the past, that certain people who are being accused of drug trade, they do give donations. I will just tell you that yesterday there was a very big drug bust in Toronto. About 1,000 kilograms of different kind of drugs were seized, and 930,000 cash was seized, and 20 people were charged. Out of those 20, there are 9 Sikhs, few Hindus, and some other communities. So Sikhs have very fair share of those 20 charged in a very, very drug bust in history of Toronto. So from drug trade also there are some donations which flow, and then comes Pakistan, which is a big question, and a lot of us know that ISI have a very wide network overseas in Punjab elsewhere to support the separatist activities.
All right. Next. Oriental Arms. What is the possibility of Khalistanis becoming the Prime Minister of Canada? Seems inevitable. Your thoughts, Balraj?
Well, I think it's a very delicate question. Earlier, somebody mentioned that Canada has a defense minister who is a Khalistani. Now, Mr. Harjeet Singh Sajjan is not a declared Khalistani from his own side. He never said that he's a Khalistani. But we all know that his family background is from one of the Khalistani organizations, and we know that he has soft side to the Khalistanis. So if tomorrow another Sikh manages at some point to become leader of a political party, like Jagmeet Singh has become, his party NDP is the third number party, so there is no chance for NDP to form a government. Usually it is between Liberals and Conservative Party of Canada that they change power. So yes, there is a possibility that one day a Sikh can become leader of maybe Liberal Party, maybe even Conservative Party. But to say that every Sikh who will become a leader will be a Khalistani or a declared Khalistani is very difficult. It is possible that the person may have Khalistani leanings or Khalistani past, but once somebody becomes leader of a political party and then the country, it will be very difficult for that person to become a declared Khalistani, because that won't fit the international norms.
Right. Very well put. Next. One is, gentlemen, please share upon the authentic sources upon the Khalistan movement. Authentic sources. Well, there's quite a few books written on the Khalistan movements in Punjab. And I think what we'll do is that we can try and make a catalog and give it to you. If you have anything to add, Balraj, you may.
Well, I don't know what the person means, but Khalistan movement, as far as I'm concerned, is there from last at least 37 years in very, very strong way. Although we have traced that origin before, the origin of the idea, but the Khalistani movement is there. So to see, and there are a lot of organizations who claim that their aim is Khalistan. And we have seen in India, earlier we mentioned Simarjit Singh Maan, who ran for the election. His party ran on the platform that they are running for Khalistan, that their aim is Khalistan. So I don't know what else this person who made the comment wants.
You also have written on the subject?
Personally on Khalistan?
Yes.
No, I haven't written any say particularly Khalistan, but I have written over the years a lot of articles about, made a lot of comments about viability of such a state, or sensibility of such a state, or possibility of such a state, and all the weaknesses this movement, built-in weaknesses in this movement, misguided movement, and so on. So I have made comments in the past 20 years in many of my articles that it's not viable, it's not possible, it's not desirable. and people of Punjab, they don't want it, and there is no need of such a state, such a theocratic state. I even mentioned that they claim that their base, one of their bases of asking for Khalistan is one day there was a Sikh empire of Maharaja Ranjit Singh. So I discussed this scenario, that consider Ranjit Singh was well and alive today, or his successive generations were there, and Ranjit Singh's Raj was here today. The question arises whether it will survive, whether it will be viable, whether his constituents, Hindus, Muslims, Sikhs, or mixed or all together, they won't have asked for democracy the way the Nepalese have thrown their king out, whether he will survive elections if there were elections. So all these possibilities show that this is not the time of a state based on religion. We have seen Pakistan state based on religion, and we have seen within 25 years it's split into two. And even presently, the Pakistan which we see is very, very unstable, and there are a lot more problems in Pakistan than in India. Certainly, India is having problems, but then the democratic setup, the secularism has a flow of solving the problems. Although this flow or this process is slow, but it is there. But Pakistan is facing the problems. Pakistan is a failed state because it's a theocratic state, and a Sikh theocratic state won't be different. And even if there is a Hindu theocratic state, it won't stand a chance to survive for very long. It is a day of democracy. It is a day of secularism, and we must find solutions to all problems within that framework. And I think the world is moving in that direction, not backward to theocratic states.
Very good. Oriental Arms, what is the possibility of Khalistani? This question has been asked. Trudeau's brains lie in his socks. Okay, that's a good one. Thank you. Sukhnain Singh, Shri Dasham Granth, Maina Ganesh Patham Manaun, Kishan Bishan Kabaun, Natyaun. No offense to भाई सुखनैन जी, हमें ये तो बता दो कि आपका जो दशम ग्रंथ है ये कौन सा वर्षन है? दशम ग्रंथ के कई वर्षन है, तत् खालसा वर्षन है कि सनातन खालसा वर्षन है कि और कोई निरंकारी वर्षन है? पहले ये बता दो, फिर हम इसको डिस्कस करेंगे. ये आप बता दो, फिर डिस्कस करेंगे. ठीक है जी. नेक्स्ट. J.K. Rowling new novel Hariputtar at the Babbar of Secrets coming out soon. Okay, ji. Gift me a copy whenever it does. Next. Mithilesh Kumar, I would like to say in reference to a question on Sikh presence in foreign parliament that all Indians will welcome Sikh presence in other countries' parliament if they do not indulge in anti-India activity. Absolutely.
Well said.
Yeah,
Very well said.
absolutely. We all take pride in Indians making trips to other parliaments. The only problem is sometimes, and Navjot Randhawa becomes Nikki Haley and disowns her past, then it's a problem. With that, we come to the end of this question and answer session and the end of this episode. So I have to hugely thank Balraj Deol ji for having come to Jaipur Dialogues and having taken all the questions from me and also from the viewers. Thank you very much. Thank you all the viewers. Thank you, Vibhuti ji.
Thank you.
Jai Hind.
Thank you.
Vande Mataram.
I just wanted to make an announcement that apology JDUSA from JDUSA that Neeraj Antani, the senator from Ohio, could not make it due to emergency.
Well, he's a politician.
Yes, he's coming next Sunday.
Are
and
you sure?
Apologized. He apologized, and I told him, you get only one chance to make the first impression. There is no second chance. So, you don't want to ruin your reputation by absenting again. That would be an interesting conversation about the role of NRIs in America. He's a Republican candidate. So do watch. You'll come. Thank you.
Sure. Okay,
Thank
Ji.
Thank
Jai
you.
Hind.
Jai Hind.